Hello and welcome into Celtics Tube Season 2, Episode 2. We had an interesting week for the Celtics. I'm Jackson Agello. He's Dennis Riley. And Den, we start off with our big three, as we do every week. And number one this week, I feel like most aligns with a former big three member, a vibe of Kevin Garnett, which is, I feel like, how he might have reacted after these first 7 or so games for the Celtics, with Marcus Smart's comments following the Celtics falling to 2-5. He essentially just called out Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in layman's terms and said they ain't passing the ball, and essentially that the team structure was screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
More or less.
And that's something you don't want to see 7 games into the season. Definitely.
Like, you're 7 games into the season and your concernometer, I would have put it on a scale of 1 to 10 at like a soft 7.
I'd put it at 6, 7, or 8, somewhere in the middle of that. But yeah, like who would have? I mean, I didn't see this coming at all this year. I mean,
especially a team like, yes, there were a decent amount of changeover with this team.
Yeah,
but the core pieces have been together for a while, and the ones who are currently having this back and forth have been together for a while.
Exactly, and Al Horford has played with these guys before, so like it's not. I mean, it's a newcomer there, but like nothing massive, like super unexpected. And like you said, Marcus pretty much called Jalen and Jason out for having sort of tunnel vision out there and not passing the ball as much as he'd like. Now, granted, Marcus did have 0 assists in that game, which is not what you want from your starting point guard. But I honestly do somewhat see what he was saying there. It's not something you want to say to the media and get everything spiraling out of control within the basketball world about what's going on with this team, but probably would have been better to keep it internal. But they have, in recent games, you've seen a lot of ISO ball. Haven't seen as much of ball movement as you saw during the first few games in the season. I feel like it's been a lot more individualistic out there recently, which is not something you want to see. And it's not the recipe for success.
And I mean, I'll say he's not wrong. Sure. Should Marcus Smart have said this to the media? I mean, obviously we'll see how the team responds. That'll give us our answer. But the answer is probably no. You would think that's something you want to address in-house, and maybe we don't know for sure. Maybe he has addressed that in-house, but He's not wrong. The offense has been incredibly inefficient, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been putting up a bunch of shots. I mean, Tatum shooting 27% from 3 and sub 40% from the field.
Yeah, it's not what you want out of your superstar.
Sure, he's averaging 26 points a game, but horribly inefficient. Like that's not a recipe for victories. And guess what? It hasn't led to victories. Like, boom. Like that's your answer. So I mean, I don't disagree with anything he said. I just question the best method to go through that. I mean, in the loss to the second loss on the road to Washington, Tatum took 32 shots. He scored 27. Like, you look at the box score from that game, you're like 27 points, 15 rebounds, 3 assists. Solid game from Tatum, but it took him 32 shots to get there. He shot 31% in that game. He's only shot above 50% from the field in 1 game this season.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And that was a loss to Toronto, where he honestly didn't take that many shots. He only had 18 points on 14 field goals. So when you're looking at it, I mean, Marcus is right. Something needs to change. The current way that they're going about things hasn't been working.
Not the best, no. And I feel like, honestly, he's, aside from not passing the ball too, is he's been losing the ball so much out there. Lots of turnovers out there on the court. I feel like Tatum's struggling big time with the double teams. And it's, I mean, 3 straight losses after that Hornets game. Like, what a great win. And then you come back, lose to the Wizards, who honestly, they look pretty good, but you can't lose 2 straight, especially the first game at home. And then the Bulls are a good team, but you can't blow such a massive lead after, what were they, up 19 in the third? And then they end up losing by 14. Like, you just can't do that, especially at home with the home crowd going. I mean, we haven't won a game at home. Like that's so tough.
I mean, you saw that Tatum move, spin, and dunk right on Lonzo, and you thought, wow, this is everything we thought from the Celtics team. You know, Tatum playing great, and then it all just turned off in an instant. I mean, that cannot happen. Like you just said, that's something that cannot happen, and obviously it did, which sheds light on what needs to be addressed. And what we've said to start this season, and what is, you know, the worst kept secret in Boston for this Celtics team to take a big jump in an Eastern Conference that has a decent amount of seeds up for grabs within the top 4.
Yep.
Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown need to take a big jump. And yes, they're great players, and that's well and good. But when you aspire to win titles, you need more than that. They can't just be great or very good. They need to be next level, top 5. You need one top 5 guy in the league. And Tatum has the skill to do that. It's just a matter of, can he do it?
Exactly.
And that remains to be seen. Big 3 topic number 2 is what they just did. They just beat the Magic in a game that, quite frankly, they kind of had to have. Like, it sounds weird saying that so early in an 82 game season, but especially they kind of had to have this one, because you don't want this comments from Marcus Smart to snowball, especially in a negative way. Like, Celtics go out and lose that game to the Magic, especially with how bad the Magic are. Guess what? Sports headlines, not just in Boston, but nationally.
Yeah.
Which they already had once. Now that means more questions, more stress in the locker room. That would have been a disaster. For now, this victory quiets that for a minute, but it didn't really show me anything to the point of success from what we just highlighted as issues. Like, nothing got solved, but they won the game, which, you know, winning heals everything.
Yeah, I got to take a win at this point, but like you said, like, really didn't see much out of them tonight. A pretty abysmal first half, I'm going to say, as a watcher. I did not like what I saw out there in the first half. Second half, they turned it up a notch, played well, ended up being up by a little over 20. But when the bench players come in at the end, they let it run wild a little bit. But didn't like what I saw, especially out of Tatum, 4 for 16. Like we were mentioning before, he's got to be better than that. You can't be doing that, especially against a team like the Magic, a bunch of young guys on that squad. You need to be putting up big numbers against a team like that. Jaylen played pretty well. He had 28, pretty efficient shooting. He looked pretty good out there. And Al, honestly, I think Al's been amazing. I'll put it out there. Al's been the glue holding these guys together, because it probably would have been much worse over the past week if he wasn't there. He was close to a triple-double tonight, but he's been doing everything right on the court. I think he leads the league in blocks right now too, especially at 35 years old. That's pretty wild. So he's got to keep playing this way. And like we said before, Tatum and Brown have got to take it up a notch. And we just got to see what happens. We got to roll off this win.
And one thing I will say for Tatum is that at least this time he stopped at 16 shots, right? When you don't really have it on a shooting day, you're 4 for 16.
That's a good point.
At least he didn't bring it up to 22 or 24, because we've seen that. You know, going 10 for 32 is indicative of, I will just keep going.
Yeah.
And honestly, clutch that he didn't do that. That's I guess a slight moral victory from that standpoint. And the Celtics wound up feeding more of the hot hand with Jaylen Brown, which was the right move. Like, that's what worked. And, you know, you mentioned Al Horford, 7 assists tonight. He almost, you know, flirted with the idea of a triple double with 12, 12, and 7. I mean, you're not wrong that he's been very beneficial to this team, but they need a lot more than Al Horford to be the leading guy that we're talking about. Like, we should be talking about Al Horford as like an aside, not as like, wow, Al Horford's really putting this team on his back right now. No, that can't be the case if this Celtics team is going to have a successful season. And honestly, God bless Ime Udoka leading this team after that commentary. First 2 weeks of the season, and here he is immediately having to deal with honestly a relatively large size controversy. Who knows what it's like in that locker room after that? I mean, Marcus Smart strikes me as the type of guy to have that relationship with the team to be able to say what he needs to say. But despite that, it's definitely a tenuous situation for him to walk into. And, they responded roughly how they needed to. It's not like they went out and shot super efficiently and moved the ball incredibly, but they showed marginal improvement on that. Assists on 24 of 33 made field goals. There was improvement. It's not perfect. The offense still only shot 27% from three and 42% from the field. That's going to need to come up. This team's got to be a better offense than that. But hey, like you said, a win's a win.
Win's a win.
Put it on the board. They desperately needed to put it on the board. So, I mean, you'll live with it. You'll take it for now and just progress forward. Like it's all right, we'll live to fight another day. And there are a lot more of these low scoring games, 92-79, the final score in that game. And that's been a trend across the league. And that's our big three topic number 3, which is the new rules leading to less free throws. Admit it, trying to get rid of that hezzy pump fake, get your guy in the air, and then defender's just screwed and hits into you. Trying to get rid of that foul call, but they've done more than that. They've also allowed a lot more grabbing off ball. Like players like Marcus Smart or Draymond Green, that's huge for them. And I am curious going forward how this will impact the Celtics, because I think while historically they've had a lot of guys, in these past few seasons who are those gritty type of grinders, do you see that from Tatum? I think this helps Brown and Marcus Smart. Like I think it's more of a hindrance potentially on Tatum because he's able to be grabbed at and pulled a little more. And he has added strength to his frame, but his percentages this year are abysmal. And part of that's just bad shooting. Yeah. That, you go through slumps, that happens. But I got to wonder how much of that has impacted him. And then what balances more? The assist of helping the Celtics defense be able to get away with a little more that helps a guy like Al Horford? Because guess what? If you can't stay with somebody like you used to speed-wise, you grab and tug a little bit more and it keep you around. But compared to like how much it limits some of the players' offensive talents, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of this season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's going to be a big part of this season in general. And I think pretty much what we see at the end of the year is going to be determined by how they adjust to everything that's going on with these foul calls. Like you said, I completely agree that I think it's getting in Tatum's head mentally, not getting the foul calls as he's been getting over the first few games of the season. Especially, I feel like last season was right where he was getting to that superstar type of status where he was getting those foul calls more consistently over the end of the year. And now they put this back on the league and he's not getting the calls as much. And he's complaining a lot, which has also been a major issue, and not running back on defense. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out tonight. I felt like there were a solid amount of foul calls in comparison to the last few games. There weren't many at all, but today they called a few. I guess another thing is we gotta make our free throws at the end of the game today. Tatum missed 2 in a row. Marcus missed 2 in a row. I think Tatum was at the line for 2 more, missed 1. Schroeder missed 1. They got to get used to this new league, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But I'm not too worried about it. Tatum's just gotta figure out how to draw that contact and work ways around it.
I do like in general the rule for the league. I do think
I do too.
I think it, like, pace of play in this league had started to drag on a little. Like games, especially at the college level, are very consistent in their 2-hour range. and NBA games had started to drift a little bit longer. And you got 82 games in a season, and credit to the NBA, you know, they are starting to address that. And I think it's a combo of it. It helps speed up the game when there's not as many whistles, and it's, you know, basketball is supposed to be a rhythmical sport.
Yep.
And when you interrupt that, it breaks up that jazz flow to it. And then also, I mean, just the 3-point pump fake was getting ridiculous. It was getting absurd. Like what was becoming a foul. Like some of the ones, like I love Dame Lillard. Like I love watching Steph Curry, but some of the 3-pointers they were drawing fouls on, or James Harden. It was just like Trae
Young in there.
It was just like Trae Young driving in the lane. His little floater nudge fouls that he was getting called in the playoffs were obnoxious. Those should not be called fouls. Like,
yeah.
I think, you know, you look who's on the rules committee in the NBA who helped usher this in. It's a lot of referees from the 90s. Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry included in the player representation, and included in the owner representation is Michael Jordan. All guys who like more physical basketball. So not surprising that this rule got pushed forward. I'm curious to see how it goes for the rest of the season. And that's why my final thought is let's get physical, because I think this Celtics team, especially, you know, having Marcus Smart as a team leader on this squad, you know, having an Al Horford, having Rob, like those are all guys who can get physical and guys who can dirty things up. And you see it more in the college level, where if you aren't quite as good as another team, but you just kind of out physical them, kind of get in their heads. But you saw it with the Knicks last year. You get in teams' grills and you defend really hard, you can compete. And I think this year, more than in years past, with the advent of more hand checking, more freedom, you know, less freedom of movement, I think that could be huge for a team. And I think whoever maximizes that, I think currently the Heat are best positioned, and I would say maybe the Warriors are best positioned to maximize that. But I think if the Celtics have some of the personnel able to do so, like Jaylen Brown as well is a really talented defender. And I think that could really be a good starting five for this team who can push people around a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think physicality is going to be a big thing. We'll probably talk about it a lot throughout this season with how they're playing on a day-to-day basis. But like you said, we need to get some more of that grit back, and we have the people to do that. We have Marcus, like you said.
And this is going to be a gritty season.
Yeah, big time gritty season. And even Josh Richardson, he's a solid defender. He doesn't really do much else out there. Or
he gets
as much as I've seen. Yeah, sometimes. He's got a weird shot, but it works sometimes.
So does Sean Marion.
Yeah, that's true. But it's going to be interesting to see how they address these problems. Because like you said, Tatum got bigger this offseason. I think it'll probably take him a bit, even on top of the other things that are also going to take him a bit to get used to. I think he's still like working his way into his new body shape and like learning. And that might even be, that might be why he's missing some threes. Maybe he's just a little too strong for them now and he's got to get used to it. No, I'm just kidding. But I think
he did not put on weight that quickly.
No,
enough.
Not that big. I'm over exaggerating.
If he added 30 pounds this offseason, I'd be like, yeah, you're right, then. Like, you know, he doesn't know his own strength. But when you add on weight that slowly, you're just getting used to it every day.
Yeah, that's true. At least he's not on like Zion type of levels right now, because that's
not muscle.
Zion ain't looking too good.
That's not.
I hope he comes back well, but not his knees.
But even when he comes back, I hope he like thins out enough where he doesn't blow out a knee or
his
something.
Knees
at that weight, with the bounce that he has, is
unreal.
Like literally unheard of. Like he would be terrifying as a defensive lineman.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
God.
He could he would probably be an all-star in the NFL or Pro Bowler. But I'll roll into my final thought right now too, and this kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of what we've been talking about tonight too, but it's just building team chemistry. Like we started off with Marcus Smart's comments, not the best way to start out the season. But these guys know each other well enough where I'm not super worried that it's going to take like a super big toll on the team. Maybe if we lose like a ton coming up, maybe, but they've been with each other for a bit now, and they know how each other work both on and off the court, probably. So from a mental standpoint, they probably all know what each other are thinking. And I even saw they had I think they had a couple of these last year, but they had a players only meeting before the game tonight, which was probably good for them as well. But they need to get that chemistry back. They need to get the ball movement, which I think I mentioned probably every single episode at the end, because I hate ISO play, unless Tatum's making them all, which happens sometimes. But we got to get that ball movement back. Got to get the chemistry back. And I mentioned Al earlier, but I think at least in the short term, with Tatum and Jalen struggling, I think it's gotta all work around Al for the next couple games at least, until Jason and Jalen get back to the point where we know they can make it to. And Jalen's been a little better. He played a little better tonight, like I mentioned earlier as well. But they need to keep shaking the rest off. And Jason's been known in the past couple seasons. He usually starts out slow, but he brings it up a notch towards the end of the season. So we've seen it before, and we could see it again, I hope.
And to your point about chemistry, who knows really what goes on behind the locker room? Obviously, the concernometer would be a lot higher than just like a 7. If, let's say, a couple seasons ago when the Celtics had acquired Kyrie, like obviously we know how that ended, but let's say at the beginning of that season, Kyrie was the one to say something like that. Like if it was a newcomer with a prominent role on the team who says something like that, I would be a lot more concerned than a veteran who genuinely has, been in the trenches with these guys and genuinely wants what's best for them. He's just trying to push them, in my opinion. He might not be going about it that the right way. Like who knows what type of style of, coaching Tatum and Brown respond to. We'll find out. But I think he's genuinely just trying to push them because he knows, as we all have seen, and anyone with eyes watching these games can say, what they're doing isn't good enough. Like they have to raise their level up again if this team's going to be something.
Big time.
So that'll do it for this week's episode. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully with a little more positivity, maybe a little more chemistry. Maybe we can help bring the chemistry, but that'll do it for this week's episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.